Good afternoon, Apex. First, I want to welcome you to my poorly furnished patio, but I've been seeing a lot online where people are wondering, hey, is there a link that I can click, or is there a designated spot to where we can hear candidates' answers from forums? And unfortunately, to my knowledge, I don't believe that any of the forums that we've had this election season have thoroughly been recorded from beginning to end. So what I want to do is compile some answers, or really some questions that I can remember from the forum, and then give my answers, but then also ensure that I am including some hot topics in our town that either I've talked specifically with residents about, or I have been seeing going on around social media. So with that being said, first, I just realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is TJ Evans. I am originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, but moved to Apex in 2008 when I was 12 years old, and went to Apex High School, was a part of the first basketball state championship that Apex High ever had, and which is how I get the catchphrase for my campaign, champion in Apex. But now for me, championing Apex look a lot different, right? I'm a little bit slower than what I used to be, and definitely a little bit heavier. And so my passion lies in championing the voice of our residents. If you want to learn more about my whole campaign, please go to tj4apex.com. And then also you can check out my social media pages. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at champions for FOR TJ. So learn more about my campaign there. My website, or my cell phone number, is actually on my website as well. So feel free to give me a call if you have any specific questions. I know we're already in early voting. Today is day 2. But if you haven't voted yet, or if you have and have some questions, give me a call and let's chat. So here are some of my answers to some of the big questions that are looming around Apex. With the data center, I do think that it's important to note that as someone who is currently running for council, it really is best practice to not give a firm yes or no answer on a rezoning that you have the potential to be voting on in the near future. But what I want to do is take it a step further and provide my personal take on how I believe not only how we should handle all proposals that come within our town, but really how we should handle growth. Growth should be handled with a marathon, not a sprint mindset. And how we go about doing that is ensuring that every development proposal that comes before council should be looked at with an emphasis on community engagement first, so hearing the voice of our residents, but then also community impact. Things such as environmental impact, health and noise concerns from our residents, infrastructure capacity, resource use like power or water, things of that nature, tree canopy preservation, and public safety. Going back to my first point, the voices of our residents should be at the forefront of every decision that our council makes. And at the end of the day, my personal belief is that there should never be any economic gain that has more priority of the well-being and health and the quality of life of our residents. All right, utility billing. I know that this is a tough topic, and rightfully so, right? But I want to take this back to the beginning. It's important to note that the utility billing issue stemmed from a ransomware attack a while ago, right? And when thinking about that, a cybersecurity attack is almost similar or has some of the same effects as a natural disaster, right? But what I would have loved to see done is the town of Apex running towards the problem. And what running towards a problem looks like for me is pretty much right away, and maybe a few days to compile and get things together, but tell the community what exactly happened, the intricacies of how it happened, and what this attack or this issue has caused in every department, right? Because it's really important to note that when the cybersecurity attack happened, it didn't just impact utility billing. My fiance got into a minor crash, I think maybe a couple of weeks afterwards, and I remember the police officer had to give a written report because their system was down. And so in situations like this, it's important that we share the information to the public and share all of the information. But then taking it a step further, coming up with a solution and sharing that with the public, but then having constant communication on updates. That to me is how you run towards a problem, even if the initial part of the problem wasn't your fault. To take it even a step further, it's really important that our residents get a solution and a permanent solution to this issue. We have residents who are trying to figure out how do they pay their next bill. And no one in Apex should be experiencing that. And so the question is, what is the next step? Because it's clear that we don't have a real solution. And to be honest, I don't know what the exact steps should be, but I do think that we should be out here asking for help and seeking help at the highest level possible, bringing in subject matter experts, bringing in state level officials, and asking them to come alongside us in this process. Sometimes when things like this happen, it's very easy to close all doors and shell down and try to figure out the solution ourselves. But we need to open this door, and we need to be transparent, gaining the public trust back, and we need to stop the bleeding and find a solution. Affordable housing is a really passionate topic of mine. But before I jump into it, I really want to level set on the need that there is for affordable housing here in Apex. Right now, we know that the average price of a home is around $616,000. We also know that the area median income is right under $133,000. And so that right there in itself, I believe, paints a vivid picture of the need that we have. But there was also an affordable housing consultant who presented to town council months back. And from the data that they analyzed, it recommends that within 10 years, that Apex will have to come up with 3,600 affordable units to meet the demand. I'm no math major, so that is like the perfect math for me. I know that it's 360 homes a year. And so the question is, how do we get to that? But before I get into that, I want to address a stigma behind affordable housing that I hear so often. And it's, oh, well, affordable housing is going to lower the quality of people who come to our town. And to be honest, that statement bothers me, and I think that that's something that could be argued in and of itself. But I do want to level set that when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about people who work for the town, right? Whether it be town staff within customer service or other departments such as the fire department, the police department, so on and so forth. And then what about, people who are in the service industry around Apex? We want everyone to feel welcome. And I think it's a little bit tough to say that in some cases, people are welcome to come and work and play and shop in Apex, but then they don't have an affordable housing option or housing choice to be able to live in Apex. And so I think that how we can start addressing that is by offering a public education campaign. And I got that idea from Marla Newman, who is our Housing and Community Connections Director. And she's doing a phenomenal job and has done some great things already. So I just want to tip my hat to her. And I think we should really lean on her expertise. Now, to get into the meat of this, we know that a municipality can impact affordable housing in two main ways. The first one being funding, and the second one being policy, right? I want to start with the funding aspect. It's important that we diversify our funding opportunities and not just rely on a yearly budget to help us meet that extreme demand for affordable housing. So how do we do that? We rely on our partnerships that we have perfectly cultivated and steward through the local government, on the local government level, right? That looks like banks, that looks like foundations or other financial institutions. That looks like churches, faith-based organizations, right? There's a organization right now, One Wake, that has had several of faith-based organizations come along the ride. On top of that, we have to utilize our nonprofit and for-profit developer relationships to also ask them to continue to join in the effort. We see this have happened already twice in Apex with the Raleigh Area Land Trust and Pulte Homes, who have provided 12 townhome units for affordable housing, and we also are seeing it at Friendship Station with Habitat for Humanity, and I want to say it's GI Homes. I may be wrong on that one, so just do the research and double check me on that. But they're partnering together to provide a really cool solution for folks, and it's a part of what's called ground leasing. So ground leasing is when a organization or entity buys the land and then sells the home to someone at an affordable rate. Every year that this homeowner is in that property, they continue to build equity within the home, but the organization is allowed to keep the land to ensure that it will stay affordable for some term limits are around 99 years, but the term limit can be renewable. And so that leads me into policy. So adopting things like that in Apex will help us continue to be creative and thinking outside the box, right? We also just recently adopted a community land trust. So now the town of Apex soon will be able to bank land for affordable housing development. And so the last thing I'll say, I know I've been rambling, and I wish I could, I have more to say, but I'll try to be as sharp as condensed as I can here. But the last thing that I'll say about affordable housing is that on top of the community land trust, we also should be ensuring that the policies that we have enacted right now are industry best, right? And they continue to be industry best as we continue to adapt. Growth is inevitable, and we know that as a municipality, you can't necessarily stunt growth. And I know that for our community, when we're riding around and we're seeing new developments pop up every day, and we're seeing how backed up our traffic is and things of that nature, sometimes growth feels more than what it necessarily is, right? And so right now, if you look at the statistics, we're growing around 4% year over year. And I've already shared how I believe we can, from a development perspective, ensure that we are growing with a mindset of a marathon, not a sprint. But I also want to talk a little bit about growth as it pertains to the whole town. A growing economy is good, right? Because if we're growing, then that also means that we're able to invest back into our community. Another thing that is good to know about growth is that it helps us be able to shift some of the tax burden off our residents if we do it the right way. If you think about the tax base right now here in Apex, we're about 80% residential and 20% commercial. And so I believe that while we're stewarding growth, we should also have the mindset to relieve that burden of our residents and come up with some more commercial use with our community impact and community engagement in mind, like I already talked about. But growth is a good thing. We need to embrace it. We need to steward it. And I'm excited to see how it yields in our community. This is one of my favorites. So I want to give a quick backdrop. I work from home and I frequent coffee shops often. And so when I'm at a coffee shop, particularly downtown, and if you've done this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When school's in session, if you're there around 2:30 to 3 o'clock, if you look out the window, you'll start noticing a mass, I would say maybe exodus, or large groups of kids walking around looking for something to do. And I think this is a beautiful thing because it shows that we've created a community where our youth feel safe. But I would love to take that a step further and start to analyze how can a local government impact the progress and the engagement of our youth. And so the first thing I want to talk about is youth programming. Another quick story that I'll share with you: about a month or so back, I know that youth basketball opened up for our town, ages 9 to 10. There were 65 spots available and sold out within minutes. Within minutes, right? And if you think about the growth of our town, to even think about that there were only 65 spots available, that's also kind of a head scratcher too, right? And I know that it's easier said than done, and I know that our Craig Setzer, who is the director of Parks and Recs, is already starting to find ways to expand. But I think that we really have to put a focus on that, right? So whether it's facility expansion, I do believe that we should have a youth center in our town, similar to what we've seen be done with the senior center. And I've talked to so many seniors who have told me that that senior center has changed their life. I would love to see us flip the coin and bring a youth center and allow our youth to experience the same thing, right? So facility expansion is important. Partnership development is important. Schools, churches, other organizations that may have space to where our youth can come and play sports, and we can expand the programming that we already have to offer. But it's not just about sports. We need to continue to offer opportunities for all of our youth to engage in something that they love to do, or allows them to begin to start thinking about their future and figuring out where their passions align. And so going from, a youth center or facility expansion, how cool would it be to be able to really partner alongside? I know that some high schools have what's called a business advisory council, where they can come and learn about, different industries to see what might pique their interest. How cool if the town really wraps their arms around this program, provide opportunities for people to see what it would mean to be a firefighter, or to be a police officer, or to work for the town in any capacity. But then also utilizing our partnerships to come in and teach in the program as well, so people can learn about the IT space, whether it be IT project management, QA testing, front end or back end development, things of that nature. But then what about some of our service industries like HVAC or plumbing or electrician, things of that nature? Offering a robust workforce development program where kids can be light years ahead of their peers in different counties or different states, and already know what they want to do when they graduate high school, but then know a clear progress or process on how exactly to get there. And so after they either graduate high school or college, how cool would it be to keep our youth here in Apex? That's what's going to help with our small town preservation. That's what's going to help with our Apex character. And that's what's going to be something that our youth would really enjoy as they continue to grow up here in Apex. When I talk about our youth, I get a little bit choked up, and I'm going to leave this in here because I try to be as real as I can. But our youth are our future, and we should ensure that we're giving them all the tools they can to thrive, but that we're also keeping them safe. So I would be support of expanding our SRO, school resource program, to ensure that every school in our town has officer to be able to ensure safety, but also build relationships with the students. And then I also would continue to support initiatives like our safe routes to school initiative that allows sidewalks within close proximity to our school, so that our children can walk to school. So that's just a little bit about my plan, wanting to engage our youth, and I am excited to see how this turns out. This was a great question that I got at the Chamber of Commerce forum that I wanted to share with whoever decides to watch this video. And the question, as you've already seen on the screen, had to do with our takes on the current process for recommendations as it relates to cultural advisory boards or just advisory boards altogether. And so we know right now that the current process is that the mayor provides recommendations to the council as who he would like to be on these boards. And then from there, the council has an opportunity to weigh in before they vote. And then when it comes to a council meeting, when the recommendations are presented before council, they have the opportunity to either vote yes, vote no, and they also have an opportunity to strike a name. And the process in it and of itself isn't necessarily bad, right? And so I think that the current process is fine. However, I would like to offer a suggestion on how we can slightly tweak or expand that process. And I think the first thing is that whenever a council member wants to strike a name, I think that we should have a process in place where they can provide actual detail and actual reports as to why they feel that striking someone's name is justified. Because let's be honest, these people in our community are giving their time, they're giving their effort, and they're giving their heart into serving on a board for our community. And so it's important that we give them a full process that would allow them to feel supported. And so on top of creating a formal process for striking, I do think that it's also important that we have an appeal process that someone whose name may have been striked can go through an appeal process and maybe allow someone, a different board or a different set of people to review that process to ensure that people aren't just making choices off of emotion, right? And so outside of that, I think that our process is beautiful, but just like everything, for the most part, there could always be ways to improve. Jacques Gilbert, who is the mayor of Apex, is also my soon-to-be father-in-law. I do want to say that I have been transparent about this. I believe it's been evident within our community on this relationship. It's all over social media. It's something that a question that I have always answered, and it's something that we both have been pretty straightforward about throughout this entire process and even before the process. And I want to address some of the concerns that maybe some of our residents may have and who have shared. And I want to say thank you for sharing those concerns, because it gives me an opportunity to explain the process. And so we know that on a local government level that you need 3 out of the 5 votes to be able to get anything done. And we also know that the mayor in Apex does not have a vote. I want to take it a step further, and maybe some may not believe me in saying this, and that's okay. But just because of my relationship with Jacques, it doesn't equate to a rubber stamp to everything that he may want to accomplish in Apex. And that's the case for other council members as well, right? And so another thing to note on this topic is that we know it's also not nepotism, because I have to be elected in by the people. And then another thing that I want to note as well is that not only do I have to be elected in by the people, but then the entire process is something that has been safeguarded as it relates to conflict of interest. If this was a conflict of interest, I wouldn't even be eligible to run in the first place. A lot of times, as it relates to conflict of interest, as it relates to statutes or the General Assembly, it's typically geared around finances. And so the last thing that I wanted to say about this is that it's not about nepotism or some of the other things that I've heard. It's really about influence. And the answer again is yes. Like I do have access to Jacques' influence, but it's not because I'm marrying his daughter. It's because I've had a relationship with him since I was 13 years old. And not only has he been a mentor to me, but we've stayed alongside each other in projects in our community. And influence isn't a bad thing. It's about what you do with it. It's about what your heart and your intention is behind it. And it's also strategy, and it's strategy that we see all throughout politics. If you think about it right now, we have candidates who are running that are utilizing the influence of current council members to hopefully be elected to town council. And so influence, again, is not a bad thing. And again, this is something that I've been very transparent about. And if you have any questions for me or anything like that, please feel free to continue to comment, under my social media, but also feel free to give me a call. I would be more than happy to talk about it. Alrighty, so the last one that I wanted to wrap up with is the focus area of mine that is my flagship focus area and is intertwined with the majority of things I talk about, or definitely intertwined with all of my other focus areas, and that is community engagement. Community engagement should be, in my opinion, one of the top two, if not three, priorities that every municipality should have. Ensuring that there's a process for our community to, one, know what's going on, but then also that our town does a great job of marketing the things that tell our community what's going on so people know where to access it. But then it's also important that we have multiple streamlines of communication that ensure that we're hearing the voices of our residents. Because let's be real, I believe it's around 70%, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit more. But at the end of the day, the majority of the people who work in our local government don't live in Apex. And so that doesn't discredit their knowledge or their expertise, but sometimes you have to live somewhere to understand the intricacies on what exactly is going on. And so we have to ensure that our town staff has access to that and has access to our residents, as much as possible. And the last thing that I want to say about community engagement, because I know this video has already been long, but I truly mean this, and I've already said it a couple of times, but that the voices of our residents should be intertwined with the decisions that our council makes, and they should be intertwined at the forefront, not at the back end, but at the forefront of every decision that our council makes. And so with that, community engagement also provides accountability. And accountability is so important, especially in a community right now that's lacking public trust. Accountability is everything. And so not only should the council be holding each other accountable with the understanding that they work for the people and not necessarily to protect an entity, but there should all be a level and a foundation of accountability that whether you're on council or whether you work for the town, the number one goal is to serve. And so we have to ensure that we have accountability, but community engagement is the bridge, is the access to that accountability. Thank you so much for watching this. I know I can be a little long-winded, so if you stayed to the end, thank you even more so. But I know something. I've been seeing people wanting to learn more and maybe kind of get some type of forum style video. So this is the best that I could provide. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. please feel free to give me a call. And just want to reiterate that early voting has started. It is available until November the 1st, which is the next Saturday. And then election day is November the 4th. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. Peace.